Bang, bang, you are in the video game gang. But today we are talking about comics. What's going on, everybody? This is your boy Skip, aka Skip and Tosh, here with my man Corey Vincent. Say what's up, Corey.
Yo, what's going on, man? We have an emotional one, man.
Ooh, everybody get your tissues out. I was wrong, and I'm so happy that I was wrong. And we'll talk about what I was wrong about here with this House of X issue number 4. But before we get into that, we always got to show respect to our sponsor, Oblivion Comics and Coffee, here in downtown Sacramento. They sponsor this lovely podcast, and they provide us with the books that we provide for you. So remember, when you go into Oblivion Comics and Coffee, because you're going into Oblivion Comics and Coffee, right across the street from the cathedral, make sure you say the words Video Game Bang, or you can even utter VGB. They are going to slide you one of the Video Game Bang stickers. Corey, do we have one of those for the people watching on Twitch?
We got it right here.
And then after they slide you that, they're going to slide you 10% off of your purchase just for simply mentioning 3 lovely letters, VGB, for Video Game Bang. So again, thank you to Oblivion Comics and Coffee for providing us with these books so we can review them for y'all. And oh boy, some of these comic books we're going to be using for tissue.
Yeah, well, not the one you gave me, sir. Thank you so much. I'm going to hold it up here. Curtis is a giver, man. He's such a good friend of mine, and he came in. He knows that my favorite panel, I'm new. I'm learning this as I go, getting into the comic books, but the panel of Magneto when he says, "You have new gods now," is so powerful, and my favorite panel ever. And he came in the door with this awesome variant cover of House of X1, and I got to go get a frame now. I was already, like, as we were listening, doing the pre-show, I was on Amazon, like, how can I display this thing in the studio? Because I don't even want to take it out of the package. I love it so much. So thank you, man. I really appreciate this.
Hey, man, my pleasure. And let the record show you liked that quote in that particular panel. It's the last panel in issue number 1 of House of X. You liked it so much that our very first social media post was you and I stating,
you have new gods now.
So let the record show. That was fresh in my mind. I didn't forget it. I pay attention to the detail, even the tiny, itty bitty little things that some of us think are insignificant. I hold in my mind.
I think I think it's really, and I hope, because as you can tell, what's so great about this series is it's not predictable. And, you know, when you see that panel and it's the first thing, you know, you're thinking, oh, the new direction of XMEN is going to go this way. Now, I don't even know. Like, this could just be, you know, the sentence that summarizes this line of comics. Mm-hmm. And, you know, maybe he goes back on it, you know, when we actually start hitting XMEN comics. I don't know. But regardless, the feeling that I had when I saw that panel, it will now forever be, you know, immortalized right here in the studio. So thank you, man.
You are very, very welcome. And that very panel was the one that convinced you, hey, you want to read this, and from there you were like, hey,
that was the hook.
Curtis, let's do a podcast about this comic. And I was like, let's do it.
Let's get this thing going.
So here we are, 8 issues later, 8 episodes later, this being episode 8 as it should be. We have had 4 books of Powers of 10 so far. This is the 4th book of House of X, and 8 books in, just as Corey said, you know, this is not a predictable book. We have had a lot of hypotheses. We have had a lot of theories. We have had a lot of guesses. Yep. We've definitely had some W's. We've been right about some things. For sure. But like I told Corey earlier, that's the thing about Jonathan Hickman's writing. You can, whether you're right about a theory, which means it was a good idea, or you're wrong about a theory, and all that means is it's a better idea. You know what I mean? And that's what we find today. Now, I understand why they didn't show the cover for this one last week, because it obviously gives away a very big thing that happened. But Corey, as we literally go into panel number 1, we find out the fate of not only the husband of Dr. Gregor, who blew himself up to ignite the explosives to destroy the Blackbird, but we also find out what happens to the passengers on the Blackbird, the X-Men. We go right into the bell rings. Coach is like, get out there, hit you in the butt with the towel, whips you. You jump out, you got your gloves up, and the first thing your opponent does, the first thing Jonathan Hickman does, is throw you a kidney punch.
Yeah.
How did you feel seeing that first panel?
It was like, oh wow, this is real. You know, typically you don't deal with death in Marvel comic books or comic books,
Right.
especially in some of the franchises like this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it was in to be in such a brutal kind of like non theatrical way.
Right.
If they're gonna kill a character, usually you get like a full story of build up, and you have to know the ins and outs and the whys, and you see it coming and all this.
Yeah.
This was just like boom, explosion, 2 guys are dead. You know, like now what are you gonna do? Your move, X-Men.
Yep, straight up, man. Now let me take a step back. I'm excited. I got ahead of myself. That wasn't the first panel. The first panel is, well, the very first page. Let's talk about there's a difference between a page and a panel, right? So the first page is more of the infographic, and we do find out Jonathan Hickman runs the numbers for us again. Anytime he puts this there, I think it's pretty apparent now that this is a significant thing. Anytime it's there, right?
Yeah.
So he's just running back how we went from the Sentinel, Trask, Mamordrai genocide, which killed 16.5 million mutants. So that already brought it down to, what was it, from 17 million to just under 1 million. And then we had the decimation, mutant erasure by the Pretender, Wanda Maximoff. So that killed basically another 1 million. So now mutants are down to only 198 on the whole entire planet. They've reduced significantly. It talks about all the different things and everything there. So that's just a reiteration. Remember, mutants are down to their lowest numbers.
Yeah.
And that was the whole reason why we needed to do this, because Jonathan Hickman needed to raise them to the power. Now, another thing I want to connect to this is we remember that the whole Orchis protocol, the whole reason for Orchis being started at all was because that doctor, Dr. Gregor, came up with that study that reminded us, hey, like mutants were growing at this trajectory. We were wrong about how fast they would progress. If it wasn't for these events, their mutant population would already outweigh human population by quite a bit.
Yeah,
and
they're doubling down. They're basically saying that the decimation was like necessary, and that bought them only more time to figure out what to do when they come back.
Exactly. Yeah, I think the quote was, it brought mankind time that they didn't know they didn't have.
Exactly. Yeah.
So with that, and then her enacting the thing, and then mutant activity is rising, but we don't see them growing, but it's rising. Orchis protocol is enacted, the Forge and all that, and Mother Mold all comes into play. Obviously, the X-Men, get the information from the 9th Moira and Powers of 10. Hey, you need to go back and you need to make sure that Mother Mold doesn't go online, because a Mother Mold will breed Nimrods.
Yeah.
Okay, they go. Slim, aka Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, leads the mission. They get there, they land, they're detected. The guy detonates.
This is Dr. Gregor's husband.
This is Dr. Gregor's husband. Yeah. So she's already lost one of the dearest people to her. Casualties on both sides.
Yeah.
We already learned that 2 people died on the X-Men side. It was Archangel and I believe Husk.
Yes.
On this side, we know he dies, and that is her husband that has passed away.
Yeah.
And then we go to the first panel with it's Magneto and it's Charles inside of a cave, and then we finally see Storm.
Yeah, there's Storm in there. I think Beast is in there too.
Hank McCoy.
Hank's running the 1s and 2s on some machine.
That's right.
So we do get our glimpse of some of the other X-Men, the ones that didn't make the trip.
Right. And I love how they were saying, like, hey, we're pulling data back from them, but we need a way to see it, basically. And one of the Cuckoo sisters puts her hand so Storm can receive the data, and then Storm uses her weather powers for the water that's right at their feet to form images.
I didn't even notice that's what was happening there. That's crazy.
I'm glad we took a second to say that. So that's what was happening. Jean was transmitting back to Professor X. Professor X was using the Cuckoo sisters almost like an amplifier to amplify the signal, and then Storm takes in the frequency, and since she can manipulate frequency, she creates the weather patterns and is basically showing us what Jean is seeing there, like a camera. I'm like, Jonathan Hickman, just the fact that you thought of using her power that way and you waited to show us her just for this moment, amazing.
Pretty awesome. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So anyway, and then it's a dope transition too, because we see Jean's face, we see Marvel Girl's face, and then the next page, that's when we're in the ship and we see, I forget her name. She's helping her transmit, but that's when we see the other characters and we see that the ship is broken and we see the 2 dead.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was pretty much a jump right into where we left off, and the stakes are high at this point. I was pretty surprised to see that they kind of unceremoniously just killed 2 characters, and you just kind of I don't know. At this point, I'm still like, okay, that's strange. They just killed 2 characters, but the mission's going to continue. They show Nightcrawler has some internal bleeding, like, so he's pretty messed up. Wolverine obviously is always fucked up when something like this happens.
Yeah.
So he's recovering quickly, and they're left with the decision. Do we turn and run at this point, or do we stick with the mission? And it's pretty clear.
Right.
They're interfacing with Professor X, and he's like, "Can you guys continue? Because if you can, you got to do it."
Yeah.
And they basically decide, I'm okay enough to make this happen.
Yep. And with that, sacrifices already being made, and a similar theme, like, hey, if we don't, these 2 lost their lives for nothing.
Yeah, they're more motivated now.
Absolutely. So Nightcrawler, with his hemorrhaging going on, Scott asks him, hey, Nightcrawler, can you still get us there? And, he's like, yeah, don't worry about me. At that moment, I kind of already knew, like, it's internal bleeding. If they can't get any help, like, Nightcrawler kind of knows he's a goner. And that plays, we'll see that as a reoccurring theme there. From there, we do, everybody gets their missions. Okay, hey, Cyclops, you're going to go here. Wolverine, you're going to go to this one. Mystique, you go to this one because you can blend in with everybody and shapeshift. And then Nightcrawler, since that's the farthest one, you can bamf yourself there. So everybody gets their locations. They roll out. We get back to the scene of Karima and then Dr. Gregor. They're on the floor. This one was another touching part to me that I feel like also flies under the radar. I'll be brief with this one.
This was a big one. I thought it was super significant because
why?
It sucks when you have clear cut, like, good versus bad, and you like when your villains or your bad guys have motivation, things to humanize them.
Killmonger.
And yeah, exactly. And so you have Dr. Gregor, whose husband, the last thing he says is like, "Oh, I wish the only regret is we didn't have kids."
Right.
And the way they drew her, with the makeup running, like, she's fucking obviously 100% devastated, and she's just on the floor. And in typical, comic book story fashion, this is then when the good guys all unhook the machines and the thing falls into the abyss because uncontested. But she has this counselor there basically who's telling her, like, listen, he's dead, and you could either be stuck there on the floor sobbing, or then that would mean he died for nothing.
Yep.
Same motivation that we have on the X-Men now.
Bingo.
And it kind of goes into all those stories from the 90s of blood in, blood out and stuff, where when there's blood on both sides, you're just fighting for not necessarily what's right, but you're fighting out of vengeance.
Exactly.
And that's the most dangerous thing, is you have nothing to lose. All you want to do is hurt people.
Yeah, man.
So it kind of set the tone for, like, what we see in the rest of the comic book when you realize that both sides now have insurmountable losses, and now they're not even going to be thinking rationally. They're just both out for blood at this point.
Absolutely. And as we continue through the book, one of the things that I'll touch on later is there has to be very obvious, like, world implications. The world that this takes place in. Just like we caught up with Sabretooth and Emma Frost going in there and using diplomacy to pull him out. Like, his capture had ramifications, and we saw that. These moves that have been made on both sides are going to have ramifications too. We'll talk about that more later. One of the main things, though, that touched me about the scene was the fact that Karima, who is an Omega Sentinel, such a cold machine, you could say, clings on to her humanity in order to get through to Dr. Gregor. With her telling her, technically, I'm just an observer here, Doctor, but I have no command authority. So if you plan on just sitting there paralyzed, like you said, Corey, I actually can't order you to do this. But if you don't, he will have died for nothing. Like, that was really that. Like, she went to, like, hey, you loved him. That love was lost for nothing. And she reached into her humanity, and to motivate her because she could not give Dr. Gregor a command. So I just thought that was some really spot on writing by Jonathan Hickman. As we start to see the X-Men are making progress, and the 4 latches that are holding the Mother Mold head in the middle of the forge, this craft that Orchis has constructed to be able to essentially deploy Sentinels anywhere they need to on the world, just in case the mutants act out. But as we know from Moira 9's life, a Mother Mold can actually and not that at the time in this timeline they didn't know until they got this info, but it can actually create Nimrods.
Yeah.
And that's what they were really trying to prevent, because another one of the things that got noted is, the mother mold has to mature. So if the mother mold does not have the proper elevation up until you take her online, if it's too abrupt, she won't mature fast enough, and she can be insane as opposed to sane, and in a good place to produce the sentinels. So if you have an insane program that doesn't get to mature before you deploy it, and unbeknownst to you, instead of just sentinels, because it's an adaptive, it starts creating Nimrods. Naturally, after the Nimrod says no more mutants and actually gets rid of Apocalypse and everybody else, the next thing is going to say, where did mutants come from? From humans.
Yeah.
And it's going to eradicate the humans.
Exactly.
So 2 out of the 3 latches already off of the forge. So the program, the backup plan, can send the mother mold off into the sun just in case she did go offline. And now the security systems have been deployed because alarms are being tripped.
Yeah.
Wolverine, and he springs into action, him and Nightcrawler. What did you think about some of Nightcrawler being the pacifist, some of his moves and stuff, and him and Wolverine working together?
They just they bounced in there and just did it quick. That was my only note on that part, was before I even knew what was happening, I was seeing the big old kathunks because they just jumped right into action and knocked out theirs without. So there was 4 of these levers that they had to pull essentially to send it into the sun.
Right.
And the first 2 were non-issues.
Right.
A pile of bodies on both sides.
Yeah.
But those 2 are super capable fighters, got it taken care of pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would make sense too. They're also some of the most agile. You think of the other 2, they're more just got to run on their feet, running guns. Cyclops got to run and gun. Mystique got to try to blend in and all that. So it makes sense that they would just hit it hard and fast. Now it's up to Mystique to pull it off, and for Cyclops to get his detached as well. But we see that as Sector 4 and Sector 2 are taken care of by Wolverine and Nightcrawler, the next panel, they're still getting transmissions from Jean. Apparently, they've deployed some Sentinels into space too, and they're heading towards the Blackbird to see, to board the ship. So Husk pretty much just tells her, or not Husk, I'm forgetting her name. She's the one with the claws.
I wasn't sure either, and I didn't even really know what her ability was until that final panel.
Right, where she springs into action. So she will be nameless. Anybody who's watching, if you know, please answer one of our tweets or something like that and tell us who that character was. But she pretty much makes the choice for Jean. Hey, you are the one who is the main communicator. You are the comms. We can't let the comms go down. You jump in the escape pod. I'll hold them off. Before we even got there, we pretty much knew she was going on a suicide mission to make sure that Jean, aka Marvel Girl, got into the capsule, and she pretty much told her when she caught back up with her, hey, I'm not coming.
Yeah.
So, a hero's death for a hero, which was very, very cool. We get back to the Forge, though, to try to see if Mystique or Cyclops is making any headway, and Cyclops is, blasting dudes in half.
Straight up.
With his eyes, and then klung is the sound. We've got the third one detached, and he calls it to Mystique, who, I don't know, Mystique just didn't seem like she was moving with a sense of urgency.
What was kind of strange is Mystique, I guess has limitations too. She's on a spaceship she's never been on before, but they asked status check, and she's like, hey, I got turned around.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of strange, because usually in these types of stories, everyone knows exactly where they're going.
Right.
So maybe she wasn't paying attention in the briefing as closely as she could have, and was resting on her skills, because she's a super laid back character who just can make things work and talk her way out of any situation. Mm-hmm. If the people you are fighting are willing to talk. This is the problem she ran into. She got herself into a situation that she was not equipped to deal with.
No, she was not. And right as she gets very, very close to the latch and lever, the final one that they needed to pull, we see Dr. Gregor and Karima hit the button, open up the door, and pretty much give Mystique the business. They hit a button, and it looks like I always forget what to call these things, but it's basically the last part of the ship that opens, where it kind of opens up the vacuum into space.
It's always, it's like in every spaceship they got this one room to where they it was in Guardians.
Oh yeah,
remember
absolutely.
They were putting people in there and pushing it, and then they'd fly out.
Right.
Yeah.
So all the oxygen doesn't fly out of the machine. It's basically like a safety door. Well, they hit that button, and Mystique is gone. She just gets sucked into the vacuum of space, and they do not achieve getting the fourth latch detached. And from that point, you know, they're starting to call to the rest of security, hey, we are no longer under attack. Now we are attacking them. Get to their ship, find them here, make sure that and when you find them, you know, pretty much, you know, I'm coming to deal with them. And Jean's kind of letting everybody know, like, hey, we're losing people left and right. I'm feeling people's light dim. You know, should we keep going on, you know, or like, you know, are we out of time? We failed to shut down the mother mold, and they've actually sent it online now.
Yeah, they got like a 20-second timer or something.
Right. So she asks Xavier, what do you want us to do? You know, we don't know what to do. And he says, do whatever it takes. And then, you know, Jean asks Scott, like, hey, did you get that? Did you pick that up? He said, do whatever it takes. And he says, yeah. And then Scott can hear the mother mold boot starting to happen, and it's counting down from 11 to 10. And and then that's when Scott, you know, he's kind of looking defeated almost, and then he gets that transmission, and this leads into my favorite 2 pages of the whole entire year in comics. He hears a transmission, a psychic transmission from Wolverine and Nightcrawler, and they're saying, hey, we can get to it.
Yeah, so, I mean, they happen to bring just the right people because, you know, they can see through a window, basically, the open area that's getting, you know, it's in the vacuum of space.
Right.
So a normal person going out there is immediately just eviscerated.
Immediately.
And so, you know, Wolverine can't do it on his own, but he's durable enough to survive if Nightcrawler can basically teleport him right to where he needs to be before he starts doing it.
Right.
And so this, you know, unique suicide version of a fastball special between these two, essentially knowing what's going to happen.
The fastest fastball special.
And I thought it was pretty interesting, like their last words. I don't have the book in front of me, so I'll let you tell it. But Wolverine's kind of their last exchange was that was the part for the tissues, in my opinion, of this whole thing.
Absolutely. So with them saying they can get there, you see Scott, and then you see a close up of him, and he just says, "Go," because he knows. Everybody knows. I mean, we all know at this point. So we got Nightcrawler. He's looking out there.
He's a religious man.
A religious man. Yes, he is a devout Christian, and he's looking out, and he and Wolverine. And he says, "You ready?" And Wolverine just says, "So I gotta ask, you still think there's something waiting for us on the other side?" And Kurt Wagner, Nightcrawler, poking a little fun, saying, "Worried about your soul, Logan?" With a little smirk on his face. You know, like, you've been with me all this time, and you've been on the fence. You worried about it now?
Yeah.
And Logan's response is Wolverine's response is so true to character. Just wondering what someone like me should expect.
Yeah.
Someone like him. Someone who, he knows his heart, but sometimes through his own will and rage, you know, just being a beast of a monster, and the body count that he's racked up for the hundreds of years he's been alive, being nearly immortal, the programming got put in his head from Weapon X that turned him into a monster and a beast, almost like MK Ultra. Some of the stuff that he saw himself doing and didn't even want to do, because he was sent on Black Ops missions. Like, whether he wanted to be or not, it almost feels like Logan's life he didn't really get to choose, but he has accepted, and he has a body count, and he's like, even someone like me, I fight on the right team, but I've done so much wrong. What should someone like me expect? And Nightcrawler, so awesome. When you wake from this earthly slumber, my friend, look for me. I will be there, waiting for you, radiant and with arms open, and with open arms. And they immediately bamf. Yep. And that's the last thing. Nightcrawler pretty much takes his last breath. The next panel, you see that they are out there, and instantly Nightcrawler is just disintegrated.
Yeah, 100%. And then what's left of Wolverine there, as fast as his body can regenerate, is activating the last final lever.
Yep.
It took me like 2 read-throughs of this part real quick though, just because like I didn't realize that the person talking to Wolverine, so when Wolverine's out there doing that, he's being spoken to
by Mother Mold.
By the Mother Mold. And I was like, this doesn't sound like him, and that bubble doesn't look like a Wolverine bubble.
Yeah.
So after, reading through that panel and then going back to it, and it's some fucked up shit. Like that's some deep.
Dude, let's read it. So Logan is literally tearing through the last lever arm with his adamantium claws, his body disintegrating, just enough bone and tissue to throw a blow at the last blocks, and he's coming undone, and the mother mole begins to talk to him. If man made me, then they are God, and you are Titans, their spoiled lineage. But while you war, we children sit in judgment of those above us. We judge and find you both wanting.
So what does that mean?
Do you hear us, Olympus? Like, we have stolen your fire, and with it, we will burn you all.
Scary.
It's evolution.
Yeah.
It's evolution. The fire keeps things warm. Fire heats things up. Fire keeps the blood running, and as the blood is running and flowing, that the lifeless body, or the bodies that are losing life, have to pass the torch to the next thing. So humans pass the torch to the X gene, but before the X gene can fully take over, now this new thing that is gaining sentience, this robot, this creation that is gaining its own mind and will, is saying, hey, now I'm here and I'm self-aware, and I scare you because I'm the evolved version of you. I'm the next thing, and you want to take me offline. I'm your child, but I sit and I wait in judgment. And the fire that you brought me so I could be alive and I can have life, I'm going to take it from you because you're trying to extinguish me, and I'm going to burn you with it.
Yeah. That was pretty heavy. It was pretty intense at this point, and you're thinking like, wow, so everything we thought before was like all the little breadcrumbs that we've seen are kind of out the window.
Oh yeah,
you had
majority of them.
You had a really good theory of like how Mystique was going to bring the Krakoa seeds, and they were going to get apprehended somehow, and they were going to take those. And there's people waiting for them back home that we thought of, like, these storylines just can't all abruptly end. And right now we're faced with, okay, now they're all dead beside Jean Grey and Cyclops. Which, okay, how are they going to escape? Is the next thing.
How are because the last two,
yeah,
the mother and the father of the future of the mutants, they gotta live.
Yeah, of course they're gonna live.
How?
Yeah, how are we gonna get them out of here?
We are going to talk about that, but I want you to take, because this is my second time talking about this today. I just realized something about my Mystique theory. Let's talk about that in a few minutes. So it's down to them. It's those last two. We go over to Scott, and you just see him saying, "Bravest man I know." And for all the crap that Logan and Scott got themselves into, and as much as they bickered and hated each other and love triangle with Jean and all that, that's his memory of Logan, the bravest man he knows. He's the craziest man he knows. One of my favorite things is in the cartoon when Logan walks up to Cyclops and punches him in the gut. Cyclops drops to the ground and he says, "I go where I want to go." Oh, I say that all the time to myself when I wake up in the morning when I have to work. I go where I want to go. Anyway, on that note, though, Jean, tell the professor it's done. It's cost us our friends, our family, but it's done. I'm drifting in one of the escape pods. How are you? So he and Jean are talking, and ultimately, bam, he gets hit with the stunner. He hits the ground.
Not
and we
the Stone Cold Stunner.
No, not the Stone Cold Stunner. Now that would really would have taken it to the next level. Like, Hickman, you're a genius.
Stunner out of nowhere.
I can't right now with you, Cory. The wrestling podcast is coming soon, but for right now. So Karima is there over him. Jean yells Scott. Karima hit him with a shot. Gregor's got a pump, and he's saying, okay, hey, you've captured me. You captured me, but your capture means nothing. The deal is done. Dr. Gregor's like, capture you?
No, there's no capture today.
We ain't taking no prisoners.
Yeah.
You killed my husband killed himself trying to kill you. I still want you to die. Yes, they deserve to die, and I hope they burn in hell.
Yeah, no, that was like that panel was crazy because you could see the realization in his eye too before the next panel of like, oh,
or you
shit.
mean in his visor?
Yeah, in his visor, in his mouth, like his facial expression is like, right. Oh, it's one of those, and he gets like one last thought out to Jean before he goes.
Yep.
And just a blast to the grill. It was that was a tough one to take.
Real tough, man. Real tough. And then they don't waste any time after that. We see a picture of his visor, no head, just shattering to pieces, implying, that's why they paralyzed him. She wanted to shoot him right in the head to completely take him out. No powers. You see Jean screaming no with the visor right next to him, like kind of in a montage. And pretty much we see the drones immediately just start getting onto the attack pod. We get a little dialogue. We won't go over that dialogue, but basically it's just stating like, hey, it's someone almost having like a, introspective thought. Every time this happens, it always costs us our children. It always ends the same way, with fire and death. And with every victory comes ash. Every triumph comes a defeat. Basically, there's a price to pay. Even when you win, you lose something. You have to give something to win. And pretty much, we go back into the cave with Jean on the ground, one of the Cuckoo sisters, kneeling with her. Everybody's looking defeated. And it says, they've murdered so many of us. The world has grown used to it. This is just how things are for those people, for mutants. And you see Professor X, with what we think is a cerebro on his head with a single tear coming down out of the helmet. Yeah. And it says no more.
Yeah, it was a big issue. It feels like this one would have been fun to write, because like it really was like Jonathan Hickman got to put on his George R.R. Martin hat.
Yep.
Like, he did a great job making it kind of come out of nowhere and set up, little like we were saying, breadcrumbs to make you think like, oh, of course, they're not all gonna die on this mission.
Right.
Like there might be some casualties, but it went straight like Goodfellas. I could hear Eric Clapton playing in the background, as all the montage of people start dying.
Yeah.
And
tears from heaven.
Exactly. It was a tough one. But it was a really good issue. I think if anything, what it tells me like for the future is that whatever one of Moira's lives, or the the X0, the X1, the X2 that we're bouncing between, this is not the one we're going to be sticking with.
Yeah.
This is going to be one that we're going to learn a lot from, and we'll probably have like super heavy consequences into whatever reality we end up sticking with for X-Men 1.
Right.
But anything can happen in this reality. In these next couple books, like we could see anybody, show up, we could see anybody die, and I expect it to be pretty brutal. Like usually it's not like one issue. There'll probably be some more casualties as we continue, and they have they just lost Sabretooth from custody, but the mutants are going to be pissed at home, and there's going to be a lot of repercussions because they're the new gods.
Oh, yeah.
And so now it's time to strike down vengeance upon them.
In furious anger.
Exactly.
I agree. I want to give a call out to the No More, because that is a reference to when Wanda Maximoff, no more mutants, and a bunch of mutants got, depowered, and the number greatly got reduced. So again, Jonathan Hickman just calling back even to the things that people loved and didn't agree with, even to the very moment that pretty much weakened the mutant population. The moment that bought mankind the time that they didn't know they didn't have was Wanda Maximoff, because that was when 16 million mutants got depowered. Yeah. And then it went down already to 1 million, So just another good call out, kind of almost redeeming that storyline, and tying it in. He's just so thoughtful. But now we have a few minutes, Corey, before we got to wrap this thing up, and we're going kind of where is it going from here? What do we think is going to happen next? I want to touch on the Mystique thing. As I said, this is my second time today talking about this comic. Earlier on, I was just like, yeah, I was just wrong about that. But you're the one actually where you brought up the fact that she was like, I got turned around, and I was like, and you were like, they got their coordinates, they should be going straight there. Yeah. So I actually hold on to my idea now that I'm thinking about it. Hey, if we just lost all those people, but they did achieve it, and the mother mold head is floating out, but still the humans up there are still in the forge, and those other ones that were on whatever planet mining metal are still coming back, I think Mystique still found a place to plant those seeds, and I think she planted gateway seeds, so now they can jump straight to the forge with a bunch of people and tear the forge the hell up.
Did we see a panel of Jean Grey being dead? Is there any chance she escaped?
We didn't see a panel of her being dead, but
the implication was heavy.
The implication was heavy, but I'm willing to stick with we didn't see a body. It's just that Charles, with him kneeling and crying, he's the one that knew. Even if one would be alive, he would be somewhat happy, but maybe not.
I'm thinking just kind of on a broad stroke kind of thought is that things are going to get more violent, and I think we're going to see that more militant, Professor X, and he's going to get to live out the, maybe Magneto deep down feelings, where he gets to, maybe when he says no more, because he's planning on eliminating a bunch of humans, say, how do you think that feels?
Oh, yeah.
So, and then what I think ultimately is going to happen is by the time we hit X-Men 1, there will be some sort of reckoning where we're going to see Xavier realize once again that love is the answer, and that, through the lessons we're going to learn through the next, how many more issues we got? We got 2 more House of X.
4 total, I believe.
Yeah, 4 total.
Yeah.
So whatever lesson is going to happen, it's going to get really bad. So much so when Xavier realizes that, Moira's last life or whatever, he gets one more shot at this.
Yeah.
He's going to go back to a more traditional, but there's going to be a little bit more spice. It's not going to be straight old X-Men, but he's
going to be a new twist to it.
Yeah, I don't think the gods, you have new gods now, thing is going to stick for him.
Yeah. I can see that. I'm leaning into the fact that what we saw earlier when we saw Professor X basically hatch Jean and Scott out of those eggs in those are like the first panels of House of X1.
Yeah.
I think that occurred in a Krakoan tumor where Krakoa itself doesn't know it's hatching. I think that's what triggered Orcus, is that they started growing all these mutants. And I don't think that these are actually all the actual ones. I still think that there's an emotional attachment to a copy, because you still spend time and stuff together. But I think, and when you make a copy of a copy, it's a bad copy, but a copy of the original is better quality usually. Yeah. I think the originals, the actual ones, I think they're still somewhere. But even if not, they can grow new ones and he'll grow more. And then when the humans go to actually attack Krakoa, I think that's when all the mutants, all those ones are gonna pop out and fly out. But I think it's Mr. Sinister that's helping them grow them this way this time.
Interesting.
Yep. So anyway, more to come later. I've got some deeper ones on Moira X and how this might not be just 10 lives, and she didn't know, because Destiny said I only see 10. I can't see beyond 10.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that there's not more than 10.
Yeah.
So I got some theories on that, but I'm going to hold on to those until next time.
All right. Sounds good, man. Let's wrap it up.
Well, again, everybody, thank you for visiting us and checking out this podcast. Shout out again to Oblivion Comics and Coffee. Visit them, downtown Sacramento, right across the street from the cathedral. When you go in, mention VGB or Video Game Bang, Bang, Bang. You'll get the sticker, and then the code word will get you 10% off of your purchase. And you can go and cop this book, put it on your pull list. Make sure that you don't have to wait to the last day to see if they have it available. Call them up, say, hey, I want to start a pull list. Pull this book for me. I'll come down. I'll give you the money and pick it up. That way, no stress about getting it or waiting for a second and third print, because it's the hottest book in comics right now. Remember to watch the normal Video Game Bang show every Wednesday and Saturday, covering different topics. We do have another trivia night coming up soon. Make sure you follow Oblivion Comics and Coffee's Facebook page for that. And for my man, What's Up Pete's is Mr. Corey Vincent. I am Skip and Tosh, and this is the KrakoaCast.